How's life in MIT? So I graduated from MIT last June, so I'm no longer a student there. I majored in 614 and 15.2. 614 is computer science, economics, and data science, and 15.2 is business analytics. How to get into MIT. Maybe we'll do those kinds of questions towards the end of the presentation. Let's just go ahead and jump right in. So everyone can hear me, everything works well, so let's get started. So today we are covering how to write the Why Us College essay, and guys, don't worry, I will be answering your questions towards the end of the stream. At the end of these workshops, I usually spend around 15 to even 30 minutes just answering questions. So let's see, let's jump in. So as you're applying to college, you are going to be writing a ton of essays. And as we have covered in previous workshops, you have two kinds of essays. You have the Common App essay, which is also known as the personal statement. And then you have college-specific essays, which are supplementals. And now supplementals will cover a wide array of subjects, right? Different colleges will have different kinds of supplemental essays. And, some might only have one or two. Some might have like 5 or 6. Some will be like 20 words long. Some will be like 450 words long. So they come in many different shapes and sizes. And so supplementals will encompass many different subjects, including your intended major. Some colleges will want to understand what you want to study and then why you want to study it. It'll also maybe cover a leadership experience. And a lot of supplemental essays can be experience-based. They'll be along the lines of, tell us a time when you had to lead something. Tell us a time when you faced a challenge. Tell us a time when blah, 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 right? It kind of varies. Another topic that we see a lot is intellectual vitality. So I know that Stanford has an intellectual vitality essay. Essentially, this sort of supplemental essay tries to get at your love of learning and, what subjects infatuate you, why you love learning in the first place. And, they want to understand why you would be like a great academic fit at a particular school. But the most important of them all, in my opinion, has to be the Why Us College essay. And we are going to go ahead and define what the Why Us College essay is, why it's important, what you shouldn't do, and then how you'll end up writing it. And so the Why Us College essay, to give you a very high-level idea, essentially is you telling a college why you want to attend. And it helps the college understand how you could potentially fit at their campus and whether you would be a good fit in the first place. Awesome. And before we continue, if you guys want me or someone else to edit your college essay, feel free to check out Next Admit. We'll kind of rip your essay apart and we'll be brutally honest. We'll look at grammar and syntax, diction, flow, structure, the overall strength of your topic. And we tend to write an entire essay below your essay, kind of giving our feedback. And if you guys want to check it out yourself, I will put the link in the stream chat. There we go. Awesome. And our consultants come from the nation's top schools. They're also editors at super prestigious companies. So yeah, if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask me on Instagram or in the stream chat towards the end of the stream. Okay, so what is the Why Us College essay? Let's go ahead and dive in. Let's look at some sample prompts first. So here we have Northwestern. Other parts of your application give us a sense for how you might contribute to Northwestern. But we also want to consider how Northwestern will contribute to your interests and goals. Help us understand what aspects of Northwestern appeal most to you and how you'll make use of specific resources and opportunities here. And then we have Tufts. Which aspects of the Tufts undergraduate experience prompt your application? In short, why Tufts? So these are two example Why Us prompts, right? Tufts is very explicit in that it directly says why Tufts. Northwestern is more indirect, it's longer, but it boils down to the exact same idea. And now let's take a closer look at both of these prompts. They want to understand how Northwestern will contribute to your interests and goals, what aspects appeal most to you, and how you'll make use of specific resources. And tough's just kind of simple. We're not really going to dive into that. But as you can see, the Why Us College essay is all about fit, right? Northwestern doesn't want you to say why Northwestern is amazing or why you love Northwestern. They want to understand how you will use Northwestern's resources and why it would be a good fit for you academically and maybe even socially. But academics are going to be the main focus here. And so as you can see, the essay really boils down to two key objectives. First, to demonstrate your genuine interest in the school because, many different schools have YS essays and thousands of students will write YS essays. And it's easy to pull apart the students that aren't that interested from the ones that, have done their research and actually thought about why they want to apply to a certain school. And then on top of that, as we just said, the YS essay has to show why you're a good fit. And this really boils down to the resources, the clubs, the programs, the professors, the elements of a college campus that fit with your academic and social goals. Awesome. And so, once again, with those two key objectives in mind, admissions officers want to understand whether you'd be a good fit for their school, the kind of student you'll be on their campus, how you'll contribute to their campus, and how you'll leverage the school's resources. And we saw this with the Northwestern prompt, right? How you'll leverage their resources, why you'd be a good fit. All of these elements come across in the YS College essay. And before we continue, let's take a quick question break. Maybe I'll answer like 3 questions right now. What questions do you guys have so far about the presentation or about the YS College essay? Let's just go ahead and see. How do you find information for the YS essay? We are going over that in this presentation as well. I'm really happy that you asked that question. That's going to be in like the second half of the presentation. All right. Someone's asking, should I attain many leadership roles in clubs? Leadership always looks great, but also let's hold off the college app specific questions for the end of the stream. Let's kind of answer questions about the live stream so far, about the presentation itself. All right, Pranav asks a great question, but a lot of resources/programs are common between universities. How do you make it seem like you really care about the university? We are going to address that all in the second stream. That's a fantastic question. How much time should I spend on the research? We are also going to address that in the second half. You guys are asking great questions. We've already got this covered. But to kind of answer it briefly right now, I would say at least an hour, right? You don't want to just find facts and, regurgitate facts that you can find within 5 minutes or so. What do you mean specifically by a student's fit to a school? That's also a great question. So let's dive into that. Think about it this way, right? A student that ends up going to Harvard is going to be a little bit different from a student that goes to like an art school or goes to MIT. And, I think everyone has this conception that MIT students are super science focused and someone at Harvard is super focused on the liberal arts or English or social studies. And, while these are kind of stereotypes, they do have some truth to them because MIT's, STEM resources are fantastic. And some other schools can't really match up to what MIT has. And so when you talk about fit, you're really trying to understand whether the student's goals align with what the school has, right? If you want to go into like super niche physics research, maybe MIT is the perfect place because they have the appropriate tools and labs and professors, whereas a school like Harvard or maybe something else might be lacking in one way or another. And so fit, I think, really boils down to academic fit first and foremost between what you want to study, what you want to accomplish, and what a school actually has. And I hope that helps. So let's continue with the presentation. And once again, guys, I'll be answering questions at the end of the live stream. And so for all of these reasons and more, all of these reasons that I've stated over here, the Why Us essay is one of the most important essays you'll write. So now let's talk about how to write it. Let's first break down what you shouldn't do in your YS College essay. Avoid writing about location, weather, ranking, traditions. I think, I'll be honest, it's okay if you reference one of these briefly, but making one of these the core of your Why Us College essay is a no-go because it's impersonal. It doesn't really establish fit. All you're doing is telling the school, hey, your school is super close to the city. Your school is super, nice and warm. These don't establish fit between student and school. This just simply says, oh, I think these elements of your school are cool, but in reality, I can also find them elsewhere. And so let's look deeper into that. Many students mention details such as the warm California sun, the proximity to the city, the tight-knit community. The issue is these can come across as a little superficial, right? If these become like the core of your essay. And on top of that, these don't create a genuine academic connection, right? You can say warm California sun about hundreds of different colleges that are in California. You can say, you can mention proximity to the city for so many different schools that are in the city. Like, these details kind of just take up space. They don't really establish academic fit between you and the college. And so I think it's best if you omit these details, or if you do mention them, do not make them the center of your Why Us essay, because they don't give colleges an idea of how you'll leverage their resources. And, think back to that Northwestern prompt. Their wording was, what do you plan to use at our school? Like, what do you plan to leverage? The warm California sun isn't going to really help that much, when it comes to your academic goals. And someone in the chat says ranking equals superficial. 100%. Mentioning ranking is very superficial. Like, think about it. Imagine you're talking to a person, right? If someone is like, hey, why do you want to be friends with me? And then you say, oh, it's because you have a ton of money. They're probably not going to want to be friends with you. And so ranking is pretty superficial. Traditions, I think, could sometimes work. But if you're mentioning very broad traditions like, oh, the big game, or, traditions that like everyone knows about, it's not really going to help make your essay stand out or be unique. Okay, next, don't rehash facts from the website. Here's what I mean by this. So yes, you will use details from the college website in your essay. That's a given. Like, how else are you going to find details or do research? But my piece of advice is that any detail that you can find within a 5-minute Google search is a detail that you should probably omit from your essay, because it's a detail that many, many other students will be using as well. So you need to dive deep, and we'll cover this once again in the second half of the presentation when we cover like the research process itself. And yeah, so once again, the colleges know, what their student body size is. They know they know like the very high level details. So they don't need you to kind of go on the website, copy paste those same details and put them in your essay. Next, don't rely on emotional appeal in your Why Us College essay. And so by emotional appeal, here's what I mean. It just felt right. I was taken aback by the beauty. It felt just like home, right? These sorts of statements come up a lot in Why Us College essays. But once again, the issue is these statements don't establish clear academic fit between you and the school. Like, it just felt right. This is just a waste of 4 words. Like, what does that even mean, right? Like, you can literally say this superficially to literally any college that you want to apply to. And so, don't rly on hollow emotional appeal. And why you shouldn't use statements like these: they're hollow, they could apply to almost any school, and they don't establish evidence-backed fit. And what I mean by evidence-backed is, you saying, hey, I've done biology research in high school. I love biology. My findings have brought me to like this niche sub area of biology, and I realized your school has a program that's just right for me because it too focuses on my research interests. And that would be like the evidence that you use to kind of establish that fit between you and a college. Statements like, it just felt right, there's no evidence here, right? You can just say this, and colleges don't really have a way of knowing whether you're telling the truth or not. So make sure you really have the concrete details and the concrete evidence in your YS essay to establish that fit. And lastly, of things that you shouldn't do in your YS college essay, don't bootlick. And here's what I mean by this. You're not writing a why them essay. So your goal is not to flatter the school, and you don't need to tell them how amazing they are. So generally, sometimes, if you're really in love with the school, as you're writing the YS college essay, you're going to say stuff like, you guys are amazing at this, you guys are amazing at that, you guys are world class at this and that. Like, colleges know what they're best at. They know what their strengths are. So they don't need you to kind of flatter them and tell them, hey, you guys are amazing at math. Hey, you guys are amazing at English. Like, colleges don't need to hear that. So don't make it a why them essay. Make it a why us essay. Mention your interests, mention them, what they have, and then create the connection. Don't focus just on them. And I hope that makes sense. We'll do another question break maybe in a couple minutes here. And instead establish fit between you and what the school offers, as we've already kind of covered. And now let's dive into what you should do. And before we dive into the things that you should do, does anyone have any questions about the what you shouldn't do section of today's presentation? Any specific questions about, the admissions process in general, we'll answer towards the end of the stream. But let's just answer questions about what we just covered, about the 4 things that you shouldn't do in your YS college essay. It's us, not them. Exactly. What's the difference between like us and them? Okay, so let's kind of cover what is the difference between why us and why them. So a why them essay is essentially when you are not bringing yourself into the equation. You're saying, hey, I want to attend your college because you guys have an amazing biology research department. You guys have an amazing, program for undergraduate students who are interested in creative writing. You guys have, this. But when you're saying that, you're not really tying it back to yourself, right? It's very easy for a student to just spit out a bunch of details and be like, I want to go to your school because of this, and this. But what makes it a why us essay instead of a why them essay is when you tie it back to yourself. So you're like, hey, you guys have an amazing biology research program, and I have done biology research. And my research, has been in this area, and your program also focuses on that area. That's why we would be the perfect fit. Now, you wouldn't say it explicitly like that, but that's the idea where it becomes, about us and not just them. Do we have to write the essay to get into any college? Not every college has the why us essay. All right, let's see. Should we sound blunt and methodical or artsy and philosophical? Lean towards more blunt and straightforward. I think with these supplemental essays, you just need to really get the facts across. So don't try to, waste space being too artsy or flowery with your writing. Let's see, what other questions do we have? Let's answer one more here. Should you jump right into the essay or give a bit of backstory? Gianna, that's a great question, and we will be addressing that at the end of the workshop, actually. Okay, so here's what you should do in your YS college essay. And now we're going to dive into the kind of research, side of things. Research thoroughly. So here's the deal. You probably have a rough idea of why you want to attend the college that you're writing the YS essay for. But before you write, you need to nail your reasons. And so what I suggest students do is that they go down a rabbit hole. And I think this is the core piece of advice that I have when it comes to research. And I'll give you a little story of, how I did this when I was applying to college. So when I applied to Columbia University, they had, I forget what the exact prompt was, but I remember mentioning, something that I found off the website. And I went down a very, very deep rabbit hole to kind of create that connection between me and the school. So I knew I wanted to code, and so I found like the website for a coding club on Columbia's website. And instead of just stopping there, I clicked on a bunch of other links. I saw where those links brought me, and I ended up on the Twitter account for this coding club. And this coding club was inactive. So I essentially said, I want to come to Columbia, bring this club back to life. And to make the essay super personal, I actually referenced one of the tweets they had sent in my essay to really show that I dove deep and did my research. And, not every one of your examples has to be like this extreme, but the idea is that you don't want to find superficial or quick details off the website. You want to go really deep. And that's what I mean by rabbit hole. So when you go on the website, click on links, keep clicking on links, and see how far and deep down you can get. And then, of course, you can also talk to admissions reps, visit the campus, and then attend fairs to kind of better understand what a school has to offer. And this all really comes down to understanding the school's culture and resources as best as you can, because these are the two main components you're going to mention in your YS essay. And it's really going to be more resources, in my opinion. Like, understand the academics at a very, very deep level. Okay, so once you have finished, the research component, you want to pull out the differentiators. And I think this is what makes YS essays unique and stand out. And this is what makes them strong. So your YS essay will mention courses, clubs, and programs, right? Almost every single one of the YS essays that students write, do this. But you need to mention the details that set the school apart. For example, most schools have world-renowned faculty in their English departments. This right here is a detail that could apply to many, many different schools. But how many have a specialized creative writing program for first-year students? Way fewer. And so that's what I mean by pull out the differentiators. So you probably have a bunch of different details about the college. You've done your research. But now, instead of mentioning these broad details that could apply to every single school, you want your YS essay to really hone in on these more niche details that are very special and specific to the school that you're applying to. And these are the kinds of differentiators that you want to address. Some details could be a bit more broad, but the idea is that you want to get as specific as possible. And so now, once you've done your research, once you've found these sorts of details, that is, once you've found the differentiators, you want to find intersections. So you've done your research, you've gone down a rabbit hole, you've found a bunch of information, you've pulled out the differentiators or the special details that make a school unique. And now, once you've done that, you want to find intersections. And this is where you really nail that us component of the YS essay, where you take these differentiators, tie them back to you and really seal the deal. So once you've done some introspection, what you want, and found the differentiators, what they have, find intersections. And ask yourself these questions to make this process a bit easier. What do you want? What does the school offer? And how does that mesh with your goals or interests? And illustrate how you plan to leverage a school's resources to pursue a larger goal. So if, for example, and I think this is a great way of thinking about it in general, if you have started some sort of academic initiative in high school and you want to pursue it further in college, don't make it sound like, the research is going to stop in college. Make the college feel like your college experience is going to be an extension of what you've already started and, what are passionate about. So if you started doing, math research in high school, you can talk about how you plan to extend that research further with a college's resources and how you want to continue that research in order to achieve some larger goal, whether it's to better understand some segment of math, whether it's to kind of take your understanding and apply it to a bigger social issue. Kind of give colleges a big picture idea of what your journey has led to thus far and how the college is like the next logical step in your journey. That is how it is the next logical step for you and your goal. And then, of course, you can also mention how you plan to contribute, right? This can also be part of that larger goal. So if you're interested in math or a specific field, you can even say that you plan to start a club or an organization or some sort of initiative at their school that pertains to, this interest of yours. It's easy to make that superficial, so don't do it too often. Maybe only say one thing that you want to start at their school. Don't say like 3 or 4 because it's just not going to happen. And above all else, help these admissions officers envision how you'll make your mark, how you're going to use their resources to make an impact to achieve your goals. And lastly, address the social atmosphere as well in your YS essay. And only do this if you have a longer YS essay. Some are short, right? Some are only like 100 words. Some might be a bit longer. They might be like 350 or 450 words. If you have space, feel free to address like the cultural fit as well, right? Because academics aren't everything. You are going to a college to be part of their community as well. And so, yes, most of your essay will address these academic factors, but towards the end of the piece, mention a club or organization that you'd love to join. And then, of course, mention how you'd contribute. And the club doesn't have to be academic. It could be like a cultural dance team or something that's just more fun and creative. And above all else, show them that you're an academic and social fit if you have enough space to kind of prove that. If you don't have enough space, focus more on the academic side of things. And now, the last point that I want to address is that the writing process will vary. So someone asked earlier, should I begin with an anecdote? Should I jump right in? It'll vary based on the word count. So I know for an essay that I wrote for Yale, it wasn't exactly a why Yale essay, but it was about why I wanted to study a certain major. And I started with a very brief anecdote from when I was younger. And then I kind of immediately jumped into present day and, where my pursuits have led me. So if it's a shorter essay, try to jump in right away. Don't try to waste too much space. But if you are writing a longer Why Us College essay, you could give a little bit of backstory, whether it be, you actually visiting campus, you talking to an admissions rep, you talking to a current student. You could set up the context to kind of, make the story more genuine and personal. But it really will vary based on word count. And now, with that, let's do a live Q&A. So what questions do you guys have about this presentation or application, or about the application process? Let me know and, post them in the stream chat. And I'll go ahead and begin answering some questions. All right, so someone just said, I saw your next admit high school roadmap. Which grade should I start joining? I'm going to be a freshman in high school. Should I join now? Alex, that's a great question. So the high school roadmap is still under development. And to be honest, it's taking longer and longer to develop than I've expected. But it's going to be a product for students of all years in high school. And essentially the way the high school roadmap is going to work is that you join the platform and then you get access to monthly exercises and sessions that pertain to where you are in high school now. So if you're like a freshman, in like the fall of your, so if you're like a freshman and it's currently October, the sessions that you get for that month will be tailored to what you should be doing in that month of your high school journey. Whether it's, building good study habits, finding clubs to join, obtaining leadership roles. the high school roadmap will kind of help you accomplish, those goals. But when it is out, you can join at any point in your high school career. It doesn't just have to be, when you're a senior. Someone asked, what 5 words did I use to describe myself in my Stanford application? That is a very, that's a funny question because I did make a TikTok about the 5 words that I used. And it's funny because my admissions officer wrote a note to me about how she kind of loved the 5 words that I chose. But it was a little bit risky because the general approach that most students will take is that, they'll say smart, hardworking, dedicated. They'll just list 5 simple adjectives to really address, their characteristics. But the 5 words that I used were go hard or go home. And the D was in parentheses. So it was like a pun almost on my name, essentially. And the whole point of that was to be humorous. And it worked. My admissions officer did think it was funny. So, do I regret doing it? No. Was it risky? Yeah. Let's see. What other questions do we have? All right. Hi, Gohar is writing a college essay topic about winning Model UN Best Delegate, a cliche topic. I have seen some Model UN essays. Here's my piece of advice. I think unless you had a very unique experience that set your, experience apart from other people, don't write about that topic. Unless you have a very clear differentiator, I try to find, maybe a different story or different topic to write about because many students do write about Model UN. And, the story arc is very similar across the board. It'll kind of start off with a little anecdote of, intensity. It'll be like, oh, I'm at the event. Things are super tense. The stakes are rising. I'm really nervous. And then the story progresses in a way that's really predictable. It'll be like, I conquered my fears. Here's how I did it. And now I'm excited for the future, right? If you can find a way to kind of bend that cliche story arc, by all means go for it. But if you think it falls into that typical pattern, I would probably try to find a different topic. All right. Someone asked a great question. So I feel like more and more people are having better applications, and soon everyone will have outstanding applications. How would you stand out then? When everyone has great applications? That is a fantastic question because I think you have a great point, right? When I was applying to college, I think this trend of doing research in high school was like slowly emerging, and now it's a very solid trend. Like many students do it. And, as admissions becomes more competitive, I think more and more students will be doing like these super unique activities. But I think what will set students apart as admissions becomes more competitive and as students become, stronger and stronger candidates is like the sense of genuineness that comes through in your application. Genuineness and vulnerability and humor as well. Really, as we see smarter and smarter students applying, the differentiators are going to be more of the soft factors, right? So what your teachers have to say about you, how you come across in your interviews, whether you come across as a likable person, in your essays, whether you're like, honest and genuine and funny and humorous. It's going to become more subjective in my opinion because really there's nothing else to differentiate on, right? You have like thousands of students with perfect academics, and the only way you can differentiate is based on subjective factors like personal qualities and then how good of a fit you are with a particular school. Let's see. All right, someone says, I'm in middle school. I want to go to a top college, but competition is through the roof. What should I do? How should I start? Did you take AP courses in high school? So I totally get that. In middle school, you don't have to worry about much because nothing you do in middle school is really going to show up in your application unless you start, like a project in middle school that extends throughout high school. But if you're in middle school, here's my advice. Join a bunch of clubs, try a bunch of different hobbies, try to see what you really enjoy doing, and set yourself up academically to take hard courses as soon as you enter high school. So, if you can somehow take honors or even AP courses as soon as you enter high school, and you need like a certain grade in middle school to achieve that, that should be your target. That should be your goal. But when it comes to extracurriculars, you don't have to worry too much until high school. All right, how to start researching for the YS essay. Go to the college's website. And maybe you can search up like the college's name followed by like clubs or organizations. And that way you can find maybe like a club directory on the school. And then from there you can do some research as well. But I think the best place to start is on the college website. You can also look at YouTube videos like day in the life vlogs. Not necessarily to quote them in your essay, but to kind of get an understanding of the vibe of the school and whether you think, it'll be a good fit for you. But I think the website is really the starting point for all this. Do you need to send thank you letters after college interviews? It's not necessary, but I did send like little thank you emails after interviews. They were super brief. I just kind of said, thank you for your time. I mentioned like, a little topic that we might have discussed and how I enjoyed, talking about that topic. And then, close off the email. It was just short and sweet. Nothing too serious. How should I work on my writing skills? So I'll be honest, I think what helped me become a better writer was AP Lang. We had a pretty strict teacher, but I think her lessons helped a lot with not only, becoming a better reader, but also like understanding what constitutes, a strong essay in terms of grammar, structure, and kind of how you outline it. So AP Lang helped me, and I remember she made us read a book called Elements of Style and then On Writing. And both of those books helped a lot, in my opinion. How to get a 100% scholarship in MIT. So MIT provides need-based financial aid, not merit-based. So essentially, if your family, makes below a certain level, MIT will, provide full financial aid. Can I talk about gaming when in the interview or in the essay? So I actually mentioned gaming in my UPenn interview, and I got into UPenn. So, but the way that I did it was like in the context of like a bigger like business initiative. I didn't just say I'm a gamer, but I kind of mentioned, gaming, but then how I kind of tie that into like the sort of business aspect of me. And I think that helped me stand out in the interview. In the essay, I didn't really write about gaming specifically, but I listed it in the activity section. I do remember that. Once again, in the context of like business. All right, I want an essay where I talk about how my stepdad told me to apply to Ivies because he believed I could do it. Should that be part of the YS? So I talk about the rigor to make him proud. I would not mention anyone else telling you to apply to a certain school, right? When you're writing these YS essays, it should come from a genuine place of fit and kind of your own desire rather than someone else's. And so I would avoid mentioning someone else telling you to apply to a certain school. All right. Waffle Straw is asking about how to stand out if you want to study computer science because computer science is becoming more popular. That's a great question. So I think when it comes to computer science, you can kind of compete on different fronts, right? I think one of the fronts is like purely academic, where you're kind of, think USICO, think like Olympiads, think just competitive programming. And if you're competing on that end, really the only way to stand out to top schools, in my opinion, is to be like one of the best programmers in the world, right? To kind of get USICO Platinum, to go to the camp, to go to IOI. At least that's what I saw at MIT. I studied computer science, but I did not go that deep into competitive programming. I think the other front that you can kind of compete on is more of like the creative aspects, right? Like building things with code on your own time, for fun. And I think by showing colleges what you've built and what you've accomplished, that can kind of inspire them to be like, hey, this student has a genuine interest in CS. They've made some really cool things. And I think, with our resources, they can make even cooler things. So maybe we should accept them. And I think on the other end, you don't go deep into like the academic side. You just kind of go more into, the fun creative side where you're building cool things, to kind of address maybe problems that are really personal to you. And so that way colleges learn about you, the world that you come from, what you're interested in. It's a bit more colorful. Of course, that side is more subjective and it's kind of hard to say exactly what will stand out, but I think those are the kind of two areas and the two ways you can present yourself as a CS student. All right, let's see. What should I do in my sophomore year? I joined around 5 clubs and take 5 AP classes and play cricket. What should I do to differentiate myself from others? So 5 APs, great. You play cricket, that's great. 5 clubs. So see, when I think 5 clubs, it's important that you obtain leadership or go deep in like 1 or 2 of them. I think 5 is like a solid amount. I don't think you want to go above 5. What I would say is that if you haven't started any out-of-school initiatives or projects, try to look into that, right? Think about your academic interests and think about what you can do outside of school to really pursue them further. Many students join Student Council, National Honor Society, and in-school clubs, but way fewer, start their own research project or start a blog or start a YouTube channel or start some sort of project outside of school. And I think those can help differentiate you. And, you have time because you're only a sophomore right now. All right. And I think with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up today's workshop. I am pretty hungry right now, so I'm going to go ahead and grab some lunch. But I hope you found today's presentation helpful, guys. Once again, if you need help with your college essay, feel free to check out Next Admit. We have a team of consultants from the nation's top schools, and we've looked at thousands and thousands of essays already. So check us out at nextadmit.com. If you have any questions about Next Admit or about admissions or essays, feel free to DM me on Instagram. My handle is Gohar's Guide. I try to answer as many DMs as I can, but I can't get to everyone, so I apologize in advance if I don't respond to you. But yeah, with that, guys, best of luck with writing your college essays. Best of luck with the admissions process. I'm rooting for you because I know this process can be a little bit stressful, but you got this, and I will see you again next time.